But going back to the Eagles offense and the Chiefs defense and the overall Saquon Barkley, okay? Saquon's the key to the game. Saquon, if the Eagles win, will win MVP in my opinion. Jalen Hurts can win MVP, and we'll get into how, but I think that Saquon has a clear path to doing so because he has rushed 100 yards or more in 9 out of his last 10 games. And when you counteract that or compare that to Kansas City's run defense, Kansas City's run defense since week 10 has been on the decline. In EPA allowed per rush, they are 19th in the NFL since week 10. They are also 21st in the NFL in success rate in their run defense. So Saquon, the best rusher in football, versus the Chiefs' run defense that has been struggling as of late. Okay, guys? Now, back in Super Bowl 57, the Eagles had an awesome, dominant rushing attack that was very much based on the strength of their offensive line. Miles Sanders had 7 carries for only 16 yards in that game, 2.3 yards per carry. Spagnuolo's game plan was to take away Miles Sanders, take away Jalen Hurts, and the threat of the run for the Eagles, and forcing everything on Hurts to win by throwing the football from the pocket and throwing the ball down the field. Okay, that was the entire game plan for Spagnuolo. And as we've already mentioned, yeah, the Eagles scored 35 points by doing that. And Jalen Hurts had a huge game. He had 350 yards in the game, I believe, through the air, okay? Now, last season when they played, DeAndre Swift did have more success, 12 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown, if that matters to you at all. But just goes to show that perhaps they'd be able to run the ball a bit better. And if you even look at the talent of the running backs, Miles Sanders compared to Saquon Barkley, a pretty big difference in my opinion, as Sanders immediately fell off as soon as he left the Philadelphia Eagles team. Now, something interesting about the Chiefs is, yes, they have been struggling as of late, but historically in the playoffs, they have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in any of their last 18 playoff games dating back to 2019. So since they became a dynasty, they have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in the playoffs. And a lot of that is due to Steve Spagnuolo, his scheme, his ability to one individual game take away a dominant rushing attack, take away a dominant rusher, including Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry over those matchups and over those years, okay? The Chiefs also have not allowed any player to rush for 100 yards or more since week 1. Lamar Jackson actually rushed for 100 yards in that game, I believe, not Derrick Henry. So a running back has not rushed for 100 yards this season against Kansas City. Although, when you look at the last 2 games, James Cook averaged 6.5 yards per carry, and he totaled 88 yards. The Bills on the ground had 147 in total. Against Joe Mixon, he also had 4.9 yards per carry, 85 total yards, and 149 yards. Now, I think some of that for Cook was based on Joe Brady just not giving him the ball enough. For Mixon, I think it had more to do with the game state and the game flow, being that the Texans were trailing for a majority of the game, so they weren't really able to run the ball. Okay, but that is a key, obvious key to the game in terms of can Saquon run it. I think in order for them to stop Saquon, they're going to have to pack the box like they did in Super Bowl 57. I think that you're going to see 3 linebackers out on the field fairly often, with Leo Chenal being the 3rd linebacker, rather off the line or on the line of scrimmage, as a stack linebacker or as an edge player. Now, Leo Chenal is important. He's been important in the game plans against Christian McCaffrey and the Eagles in the previous seasons. He actually had a really good game in both of those games, the past 2 Super Bowls. He doesn't play a ton of snaps, but every single time they play a run-heavy team, he is heavily involved in stopping the run. One way that the Eagles can ensure that Leo Chenal is not as involved in this game is by using more 3 wide receiver sets as opposed to 2 wide receiver sets. When you look at the Chiefs defensively, and oftentimes when they like to play their base personnel, it's usually against 2 tight ends. But even in that game against Philly, they almost treated Dallas Goedert in a disrespectful fashion in Super Bowl 57, having him lined up against guys like Nick Bolton or a linebacker like with regularity, Willie Gay, and they asked that linebacker to try to cover Dallas Goedert, one of the most talented tight ends in the league. So that's where a potential mismatch could come in if Spagnuolo does decide to overcommit to the run. And I saw many times just taking screen captures of like 8 or 9 players in the box at times for the Chiefs against the Eagles in Super Bowl 57. Again, trying to ensure that Sanders and the Eagles and Jalen Hurts could not keep the ball and run the ball, but instead they would have to throw it because of the amount of people in the box. It's a similar game plan we've seen for Spagnuolo against Lamar Jackson in the past, where they forced the Ravens to have to throw the ball down the field to beat them. With McCaffrey and the Niners, it was a little bit different. I think the Eagles and the Niners are a different breed because the Niners are more schematically based with their running game, more so than just pure talent, where the offensive line of the Eagles, they run like 4 or 5 plays, but they're just insanely good at them because their offensive line is freakish and one of the greatest we've ever seen. So it's just hard to defend that at times. No matter what you do schematically, they're just so dominant up front. Now, players like Wharton, Pennell, and Nandi are going to have to be names that you're familiar with when watching the Super Bowl if you want to get into the weeds. These are defensive tackles for the Chiefs that will all have to rotate and defend the run. Wharton has been the guy that started alongside Chris Jones for much of the season. Pennell has been one of the bigger contributors in run-heavy scripts in the past for the Chiefs, and Derek Nandi is also a contributor as well. Nick Bolton is going to be playing pretty much every snap. I'm sure Drew Tranquil will see a little bit of action in terms of that second linebacker, both in their nickel sets, but also in their base packages. And then another player that's really important that we'll touch on a little bit later is Connor, their nickelback, who is kind of like a big corner or a big safety who plays as their nickel. He's not the greatest in coverage, which we'll get to, but he's also a good run defender, a good tackler, and a good blitzer, which is key to their run defense. So I could see them playing a lot of traditional like 4-3 formations on early downs, 4-3 under type of formation vibes from the Chiefs to be able to stop Saquon Barkley and to make Jalen Hurts throw the ball. I don't know how successful that will be, though, because we've seen teams stack the box against the Eagles like the Rams, and they have not been able to accomplish that feat, right? They have been able to stack the box and maybe occasionally get a stop, but they've also allowed a lot of big gains because once you get past that initial line, if you're able to break past that initial line, Saquon is just faster than everybody on the field and takes it to the house. So there could be explosives, but what Spagnuolo is aiming to do is to create negative runs, to create no gains, and to force the Eagles into second and longs, third and longs, and in situations where he can have his positive advantage, which is blitz packages against Jalen Hurts, which we'll also touch on more often, okay, later on. But another interesting stat is that Saquon Barkley averages 2 yards per carry more in the second half of games this season, and he is forcing a tackle to be missed at a 9% higher rate in the second half. The Chiefs, though, do have the lowest missed tackle rate in the NFL, so that comes in handy for the Chiefs, their ability to tackle and get Saquon down. So pay attention to that. As the game wears on, if the Eagles are having success running the ball and possessing the ball, the more the Chiefs are going to wear down, and the more eventually that Saquon's going to pick up more and more yardage, okay? Which is why this might be the most challenging Super Bowl that the Chiefs have ever had in terms of being able to come back. If the Chiefs actually fall behind, this might be the most difficult Super Bowl for them to come back because of the combination of Saquon and the combination of Hurts running the ball and the combination of the defense of the Eagles, which is one of the more talented that we've seen the Chiefs face in a Super Bowl, okay? Combined with, and we'll get to your super chats, guys, thank you so much. Combined with the Chiefs' inability to really slow down running backs as of late, they've struggled against quarterbacks running as well. They've allowed 4 straight quarterbacks to rush for 39 yards or more, Allen included, CJ Stroud included. They have not been great against quarterbacks running as of late, okay? And a key ingredient to the Eagles running the ball is their tight end, Dallas Goedert. On plays that Dallas Goedert is on the field, they rush for 6.3 yards per carry. When he is not on the field, they rush for under 5 yards per carry at 4.9. When they rush towards Dallas Goedert, the strong side, they go for 5.8 yards per carry, while when they go to the opposite side, it's only 2.9. So Dallas Goedert is a key to this game as a blocker and a receiver. And in the games where Goedert was not active, it definitely showed up in the ability for the Eagles to run the ball a little bit. So he is a key part of this game as a mismatch in the run and the pass game because he's such a good blocker, but also a talented receiver. Okay, so Goedert, one of the more underrated players in the NFL, very, very, very useful in this Super Bowl. Let's just take a quick break for the Super Chats. Shout out to Bodo first. $50 with the RKO. Shout out to Bodo, my man, in the chat. Thank you to the legend himself. And we also have Big Al, who says Eagles 27, Chiefs 24, Philly wins and covers, Saquon wins Super Bowl MVP. Thank you so much, man, for the $25. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it, bro. Thank you for the $25, a Big Al. Thank you for the 50, Bodo. Thank you guys for tuning in and Gronk spiking the like button. We're just getting into the weeds here of the Eagles offense versus the Chiefs defense. And as I do mention that, let's just take a quick look at the statistics in terms of the Eagles offense against the Chiefs defense as we continue to dive into this matchup. So the Eagles, they are 10th in yards per play offensively, while the Chiefs defense is 12th. Rush EPA, the Eagles are first, while the Chiefs are 15th. The Eagles' passing EPA is 7th, and the Chiefs are 16th. And the Eagles have the 8th points per drive offensively, while the Chiefs are 13th. Statistically speaking, the advantage lies with the Eagles' offense against the Chiefs' defense. The Chiefs are a big defense in terms of big game defense. They are a great defense in big games over the past couple of years because of their coaching, because of some of their individual talents like Chris Jones, because of guys like Trent McDuffie, because of their hybrid nature of their defense, their ability to stop the pass or the run, their ability to be scheme diverse. They are very good in big games. That being said, it's hard to be great and shut down an offense that is this talented when we look at it player for player for player, which is why we'll continue to dive into why the Eagles do have advantages on this side of the ball. But it wouldn't be crazy for the Chiefs to have one particular avenue to slowing down the Eagles. Okay, so let's dive into Dallas Goedert. He's going to be a big player in this game, and I would look to bet some of Dallas Goedert's props if I were a betting man, which you guys know I am. The Kansas City Chiefs allowed the most yards to tight ends this season, over 1,100 yards, nearly 1,200 yards. They also allowed the 4th most catches to the position among all NFL teams. Dallas Goedert himself had 85 yards against the Washington Commanders, and he also led the Eagles in receiving in the divisional round against the Rams, okay? A lot of teams have been targeting Connor, Reed, Cook at that safety position, and anytime a linebacker is one-on-one, a lot of teams will be targeting that. We saw the Texans with Dalton Schultz target that quite a bit, especially with the lack of receiver options that they did have outside of Nico Collins. Okay, in Super Bowl 57, I kind of felt like the guy had 100 to 125 yards in that game just based on watching it. When I remember it, it felt like he had a massive game, right? But he only had 6 catches. 6 catches is still quite a lot, especially for Goedert, who averages about 4 in his career. But 6 catches on 7 targets for 60 yards. Still a pretty darn good game for him, but he was only the 3rd leading receiver for the Eagles in that Super Bowl. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith both had more yards than he did. But Goedert will be involved in terms of play action. He'll be involved in terms of the run game. He'll be involved in terms of the one-on-ones, especially if the Chiefs look to play more base personnel to stop Saquon Barkley. He will be the biggest mismatch. He will be involved in terms of RPOs. They've gotten him very involved in releasing to the flats and getting the ball out quick for Jalen Hurts. He is that guy that often is getting that ball and going for yards after catch in those situations. One interesting stat for Goedert is that he is the best tight end in the NFL against man coverage. In yards per route run, he had 3.6 yards per route run, which was the best in the NFL against man coverage. So when the Chiefs look to play their 2-man coverage, 2 safeties deep, man underneath, that is what they do a lot of the time, or they like to play cover 2 blitz or cover 2 zone. They like to play a lot of cover 2. Goedert will beat man coverage consistently. I think there'll be another receiver that they look to when they play a lot of zone, but that's the guy that I think consistently they will look to feature as their man coverage beater in the game. Now, so that's for Dallas Goedert. When we're looking at the rest of the weapons, A.J. Brown against man coverage was the best receiver in the NFL against man coverage this season at 4.04 yards per route run. So when the Chiefs play man coverage, which honestly, they probably will sometimes on early downs and occasionally on 3rd and long to blitz, but it probably is not the best formula. Why? Because Hurts can run, so you have to deal with containing Jalen Hurts in the pocket. 2, you have to cover Dallas Goedert with a safety or a linebacker, and we now know that he's the best tight end against man coverage in the NFL. You have to cover A.J. Brown. Are you going to do that with Jalen Watson and a safety over the top? Okay, if you do that, then Devontae Smith's one-on-one. If you do that, then Dallas Goedert's one-on-one. Do you put Trent McDuffie on Devontae Smith? Do you put Trent McDuffie on A.J. Brown? So there will be decisions made by Steve Spagnuolo if you play man coverage. I think more often than not, we'll see McDuffie on A.J. Brown because McDuffie played 98% of his snaps in the playoffs on the outside of the formation and not in the nickel spot. And Devontae Smith played a lot more snaps in the slot, okay? Kansas City also doesn't only play man quite a bit. They like to mix their stuff, but like I said, a lot of cover 2 variations. They like to press a lot. So they press at a 52% rate, which is the most in the NFL. Why that's important is because A.J. Brown is the best receiver in the NFL against press. This is not subjective. This is objective. Statistically, he is the best receiver against press. In Super Bowl 57, he beat press coverage for 5 catches for 92 yards, and I believe a touchdown against Trent McDuffie, where he mossed him in the end zone. So that's a matchup to watch. A.J. Brown against man, whether it be McDuffie or not, he should feast in this game if the Chiefs do decide to play man. When they play zone, I think that will be when they look to like double A.J. Brown, try to take him out. Maybe occasionally they'll look to put McDuffie on Smith, put Watson on A.J. Brown, put a safety over top A.J. Brown, try to take him out when they play man and take their chances with Dallas Goedert. That might be the way they go as well. That might be the smartest. It just takes the variations of the blitzes and the number of players you can put in your blitz packages. If you double a receiver, it takes away your ability to do a lot of other things, right? Now, another matchup that I think favors the Eagles is Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith has played quite a few snaps in the slot this year. He played 54.9% of his slot snaps, so snaps in the slot, and 68% in the conference championship. So just last time they played, he had nearly 69% of his snaps in the slot in the conference championship. Why that's important is because the Chiefs slot corner, Connor, has allowed the 3rd highest completion percentage in the NFL this year. He is not very good in coverage. Like I mentioned, he's good at blitzing. He's good at stopping the run. He will be important for the Chiefs to stop Saquon, which is their number 1 goal. Because as we mentioned, Saquon has 9 out of his last 10 games with 100 yards. Saquon is their best player. Saquon is the feature of the offense. Saquon is arguably the best player in the NFL. So the Chiefs are going to try to stop Saquon first and foremost. But now you have a trickle-down effect of having to deal with A.J. Brown, having to deal with Dallas Goedert, and Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith doesn't catch a lot of passes. He's been held under 4.5 receptions in 7 out of his last 10 games. But against the Chiefs, he has a 99-yard game and a 100-yard game in the past 2 seasons. So he's had big games the last 2 times he's played the Chiefs. Last time they played the Chiefs, A.J. Brown did next to nothing. And really the offense struggled quite a bit, but they still won the game. Devontae Smith was the best player in the game, along with Dallas Goedert, as expected. Devontae Smith is much better against zone than man, though. He is the 15th best receiver in yards per route run against zone than man, where he's like more middling. Still a good player, but not as good. So the player that they might feature in zone is Devontae Smith, especially because he's over the middle of the field, and he'll be, they'll probably be shifting their attention towards A.J. Brown when they play a lot of zone and they look to blitz. Devontae could be that option to be open against zone, okay? I actually think Devontae Smith has a chance to lead this game in receiving yards because I think he will be the guy that the Chiefs most likely are going to allow to play more one-on-one, and I think that they'll put less attention on him than A.J. Brown. I also think that, like I said, Dallas Goedert has a good matchup himself, but kind of everybody knows that at this point, it feels like. Now, an interesting thing when it comes to the wide receiver position in particular against Kansas City is that the Chiefs defense has not played an offense with 2 great receivers all year. When you really look at their schedule, The closest that they came to playing a team with two really good receivers was the Texans. And that was for 3 quarters, right? Like Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And Tank Dell is not great. He's not Devontae Smith. He's good. He's not Devontae Smith, right? Nico Collins, A.J. Brown, fairly similar level, right? I would say. They're probably like the 4th and 5th best receiver in the league or something like that. 3rd and 4th or 3rd and 5th or whatever you want to say, right? But when you look at the schedule for the Chiefs, Tampa Bay, when they played Tampa Bay, they didn't have Mike Evans. They didn't have Chris Godwin. When they played San Francisco, they didn't have Debo, and Ayuk got hurt very early in the game. When they played Cincinnati, T. Higgins didn't play. When they played the Bills, well, they don't have any receivers anyways. When they played the Ravens, well, they only really have Zay Flowers. That was week 1 as well. When you go down the schedule, I mean, they really have not played a team with 2 receivers as good as A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and you could check that for yourself if you want. And then you throw in the 3rd option of Dallas Goedert, which makes it more interesting. So I know that we're circling back here to the fact that the Chiefs moved on from L'Jarius Sneed this offseason, and it has not really burnt them until potentially now. Will Jalen Watson step up? Will Connor be the right guy in the nickel spot? Because what made the Chiefs secondary so good last year was the fact that they didn't have a weakness at the cornerback position. You could put McDuffie at the nickel spot because you had Sneed on the outside and you had Watson on the outside. And then behind that, you had Williams who could play on the outside, right? But now you've got this kind of trickle-down effect of where our safeties aren't playing as good. Justin Reed has declined. Connor is at our nickel spot. McDuffie now has to play on the 1 instead of the 2. Now McDuffie as a nickel is taken away from that spot and he's playing on the outside. So there's that effect that could be kind of forced by the Eagles here, especially considering how dominant their run game is to open up things for their passing game, okay? But the key to the game on offense, beyond just Saquon Barkley, is Jalen Hurts' ability to anticipate the blitz, his answers for the blitz, his ability to hang in against pressure, and his ability to play against Spagnuolo, okay? Can Spags confuse Jalen Hurts? Because when you look at it from an individual player perspective, the Chiefs are outgunned. They're outgunned on the perimeter. They're outgunned on the offensive line. They're outgunned at tight end. The best chance for the Chiefs is their coaching and their ability to create negatives, to force blitzes, to be able to get pressure on Hurts and force the weakness of the Eagles to beat them, which is Jalen Hurts' brain, okay? Hurts versus the blitz. This season was actually his best regular season against the blitz in his career, okay? He has traditionally, though, struggled against the blitz, okay? And against pressure in particular, he is really bad. When you compare Jalen Hurts when he is clean to when he is pressured, he is a totally different player. When Jalen Hurts is pressured, he is the worst quarterback in the league in success rate and EPA per attempt. He is also 33rd out of 37 in sack rate and 32nd out of 37 in yards per attempt, okay? So the splits when pressured and when clean are insane. The thing is, though, that the Chiefs do not get a lot of pressure with a 4-man rush. And against the Eagles, it's going to be very hard for them to get pressure with a 4-man rush. So in order to get pressure, they're going to have to blitz. In fact, the Chiefs only rank 30th in EPA per pass play when they don't blitz this season, which is 3rd last, guys. They're bad when they only send 4. They're probably the best blitzing team in the NFL, okay? Some interesting things about Hurts and the Eagles, though, is that the Eagles are 9-0 when Jalen Hurts passes for 200 yards this season. They're 9-0 when Hurts has 200 yards. Hurts also has the most yards in his regular season career against the Chiefs, 387. And in his postseason career with 304. Both games were against the Chiefs. So I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because Spagnuolo just flat out disrespects Jalen Hurts more than 99% of defensive coordinators in the NFL. Basically allowing the passing game to become easier for him to accomplish because he's selling out to stop the run because their offensive line has always been the main ingredient to their success. But for whatever reason, Jalen Hurts has had a ton of success throwing the ball against the Chiefs, okay? Just statistically speaking. That being said, if for some reason, like Chris Jones, I think Chris Jones is going to play a lot on the inside because I don't think you want him to play on the outside. He is the only defensive lineman in the NFL this year to have 30 pressures as an edge player and an interior player. I would expect him to play on the interior because Landon Dickerson and Mekhi Becton and Cam Jurgens, although still very good, are not as good as Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, who are pretty much not going to be beat by anybody in the league more than once in a game. Okay, Mike Dana and George Karlaftis probably will be stonewalled for much of the game. I would expect a little bit of Mike Dana from the interior on passing downs. I could see an impact being made by him with his quickness on the inside. Some ways that the Eagles can avoid the Chiefs beyond just the Chiefs blitzing and getting pressure on Hurts beyond just running the ball is they could use some no huddle after they get a first down. They oftentimes do no huddle, and they can use that no huddle to be able to throw off the play calling and the situating of the defense by Spagnuolo so that the defense remains vanilla and simple. Another way that they could do this is by using play action. The Chiefs are 28th against play action this year, while Jalen Hurts has 116 passer rating using play action. So I would expect on early downs, a little bit of play action from the Eagles, especially early in the game with how much the Chiefs are going to be selling out to stop Saquon and get that early stop. So I would expect a little bit of Hurts throwing the ball with RPOs and play action early in the game. And I would expect Kellen Moore to be somebody that makes or breaks the game for the Eagles. Does Kellen Moore come prepared with third down play calls? The ability to identify and have Hurts prepared to audible at the line of scrimmage and to be able to identify pressure. The red zone play calls. The ability to get 2-point conversions if you need it because Joe Brady wasn't ready. The ability to convert on fourth down beyond the tush push because Joe Brady wasn't ready, right? Spagnuolo won that matchup against Joe Brady. Does Kellen Moore come prepared with 2 weeks to prepare with some money plays in the big moments of the game, on third down, on fourth down, in the red zone, obviously going to make or break. Now, Kellen Moore and the Eagles are not going to have to stem too far from what they are because their talent is so magnificent. They have the best O-line in the league. They have a top 5 receiver in the league. They have a top 5 number 2 receiver in the league. They have a top 7 tight end in the league and the best against man coverage. They have Saquon freaking Barkley. And they have a human truck at quarterback running the ball. So they shouldn't have to do too elaborate of scheming like, let's say, a Shanahan last year would have to accomplish because of the loss on the offensive line department, right? Or the loss at the receiver department on the outside. This is probably going to be more brute force from the Eagles, and they should be able to have success that way. But I will also say, if they find themselves in this game, especially early, not being able to run the ball as well as people would think and getting into second and third and longs, that's where the Chiefs can take it to the Eagles because that's their advantage. Because I do think that the scheme, the pressure, the blitz of Spagnuolo will get to Hurts more often than not because I don't trust Hurts mentally to be able to process it and to be able to get through it and to be able to win that way. I just don't trust him in that facet of the game. So the Eagles are going to have to avoid that as best as possible. Okay, so that's that side of the football. Pretty in-depth breakdown. You guys let me know what you think. Who has the advantage on offense? The Philadelphia offense or the Chiefs defense? Let me know between the matchups on the outside, the matchups up front. I do think the Eagles will be able to score. It's just a matter of how quickly will they score? How will the Chiefs play them? So that is it a lot of explosive plays or is it more so matriculation of offense? Is it like, okay, we're going to go on long drives and try to kill the clock? Are they going to be run heavy? Are they able to run the ball as successfully as we would think? There are some counteracting kind of statistics between both sides of the ball. Thank you guys so far for watching. Don't forget to Gronk spike the like button as we move to the other side of the football.